Picture this. You're walking through this immense, incredibly quiet American cemetery in France. Everywhere you look, you see thousands upon thousands of perfectly aligned white crosses, just standing there in total silence. But then, at the base of one specific cross, leaning gently against the pristine white marble, you notice something unexpected: a solitary, worn-out baseball. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the deeply personal journey behind that exact baseball and the story we call The Last Letter from Normandy. It's a story that takes the massive, almost incomprehensible scale of World War II and brings it right down to the heartbeat of a single soldier. You know, when we study history, especially the summer of 1944, when the world was literally burning in the flames of global conflict, it's just so easy to get lost in those overwhelming statistics, right? We see these sweeping maps, we hear about millions of troops crossing oceans, and we talk about these massive grand strategies to defeat Nazi Germany. But to really grasp the weight of it all, we have to stop and ask ourselves, what is the actual true cost of a global victory? Before we get completely lost in the macro-level history, we absolutely must zoom in on the micro. We have to look at the individual, totally ordinary lives that actually bought our freedom.
To answer that question, I want you to just think about the number 21 for a second. Think about what being 21 years old actually means. I mean, it's incredibly young. That's a time when most of us are just, trying to figure out who we are and what on earth we want to do with our lives. Yet, 21 was the exact age of a small-town Texas soldier named Daniel Carter when he packed up his entire life and crossed the vast Atlantic Ocean to fight in Europe. He wasn't some seasoned career military strategist. He was just a 21-year-old kid stepping right into the middle of the most devastating conflict in human history. And honestly, Daniel's life was defined by this incredibly jarring contrast. Before the war, he was just an ordinary farm boy. His whole world consisted of these really simple joys: playing baseball, going fishing, and constantly writing letters to his younger sister, Emily. But then, Pearl Harbor happened, and literally everything changed overnight. He enlisted in the U.S. Army to serve his country, and his life shifted so rapidly from that of a peaceful farm boy to a brave young man thrust into a burning world. He basically had to trade his fishing rod and his baseball for a uniform and a rifle.
So, let's map this out. Daniel's journey through the European theater in the summer of 1944 was just a complete blur of rapid, harrowing shifts. As we look at this timeline, you can see that in just a matter of days, he went from the sheer terror of the June 6 Normandy landings to an incredibly emotional reception in liberated French villages. Then to a quiet, introspective moment beside a campfire, before being thrust right back into a deadly combat mission just a week later. We're going to walk through these defining moments together so we can really understand the incredible weight placed on his young shoulders. Now imagine this. It's June 6, and Daniel lands on Normandy. The beach is an absolute nightmare, just total chaos, thick smoke, and deafening explosions everywhere. Soldiers are running frantically across the sand, his captain is screaming orders over the noise, and enemy machine guns are just raining fire down from the cliffs above. Men are falling left and right before they can even reach the safety of cover. Daniel was absolutely terrified, for sure. But here's the thing. He kept moving forward. In this unbelievable act of humanity, right in the middle of all that slaughter, he actually helped carry an injured soldier to cover, risking his own life to save someone else. It's a moment that truly shows his profound courage during the darkest possible hours of war. But war is full of extremes, right? Because just days later, the terrifying, grim reality of the beaches shifted to this profound sense of hope. For the locals, freedom had finally arrived. Daniel and his unit marched through these small French villages that had been completely leveled by the fighting. But the reception they got, it was just incredible. The American soldiers were greeted by crying elders who were thanking them for risking their lives, and little kids waving flags with massive smiles on their faces. It was this brief, beautiful reminder of exactly what they were fighting for, just a momentary warmth amidst the cold reality of that campaign.
Then, one cold evening, sitting beside a campfire, Daniel took a moment to write a letter back home to his younger sister, Emily. And I really want you to listen to the profound, selfless clarity in the words he chose here. He wrote, "If I return home, I want to live a peaceful life again. But if I do not, remember that I fought so future children would not have to see another war." It's just so moving. He desperately longs for peace, but he completely, willingly accepts the possibility that he might not make it back. His motivation isn't glory or medals. It's this deep, abiding hope that future generations will be spared the horrific things he's witnessing.
But honestly, it's the very next line of his letter that absolutely breaks your heart. He wrote, "Tell Mom not to cry." "Tell Dad I finally became brave." Wow, that is incredibly powerful. Think about it. Here is a 21-year-old farm boy, a kid who just survived the unimaginable horrors of D-Day and saved a wounded man's life on a blood-soaked beach. And he's only just now realizing the true extent of his own courage. It really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's being completely terrified and choosing to step up and act anyway.
Sadly, just a week after writing that beautiful letter, Daniel's platoon was thrown right back into the fire. They were ordered to assault a heavily defended hill in the French countryside. And this battle was brutal. It lasted all night long. They fought through absolutely miserable conditions. Pouring rain, blinding explosions lighting up the dark sky. And during all this chaos, Daniel spots two fellow soldiers trapped under heavy enemy fire. Without a single second of hesitation, he rushes forward. He helps them escape. But just as they reach safety, a shell exploded nearby. When the battle finally ended, the hill was captured. But Daniel never returned.
You know, the machinery of war just keeps turning, and months later, the conflict in Europe finally moved toward victory. But back home in Texas, the reality of that victory was deeply, painfully personal. One day, Emily received a package. Inside were her brother's final words, that exact letter he wrote by the campfire, along with a military medal for his incredible bravery. It was an unbelievably bittersweet moment. I mean, she was completely heartbroken by the loss of her older brother. But at the exact same time, she felt immensely proud that he had sacrificed his life for the freedom of so many others. Which brings our story full circle. Years after the war had ended, Emily traveled across the Atlantic, making the same journey her brother had made. She visited that quiet American cemetery in France, walking among those thousands of white crosses standing in silence. When she finally found Daniel's grave, she reached into her bag. She pulled out his favorite baseball from their days on the farm, placed it gently beside his cross, and whispered, "You came home after all." So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. When you look back at history, behind every massive historical victory, how many ordinary people gave absolutely everything for our peace? Daniel Carter's story is just one of thousands of untold stories of courage from World War II. We have to remember that behind the immense scale of every global event, there are farm boys, siblings, and totally ordinary people who paid the ultimate price. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this leaves you eager to look a little closer and discover the individual humanity hiding